No, just iletha.
Advocate Matlape, mute.
Huh?
Will do so. We anticipate, my lady, that at best the payment will be received not this week, but possibly in the middle of next week.
Come again?
We anticipate that if payment is received, it will not be received this week. This being a short week, it will be received in the middle of next week, possibly, which will then leave us with limited time to prepare, but we will work through the weekends and late at night to be ready. If one has regard to the structure of this month, my lady, today's Tuesday, the 11th, so there are only 4 days in this week. Next week is a complete week, my lady. It has 5 days. And the following week is a long weekend, which starts on a Thursday, where I don't believe most people work on the Friday. So in essence, my lady, we're talking about 13 days at most that the matter could proceed, and most probably 12. We would require that time to prepare should we receive the payment. We've been assured that we will. We have done a substantial application for a postponement, my lady, that was only uplifted this morning, but we had previously informed the evidence leaders that we would be proceeding with such an application. If I may take your ladyship through the application.
Just before we do that, can I find out whether all the parties have received the application?
It's on case lines, my lady.
Yes, but I want to know whether they had the opportunity to look at it or whether they saw it. Ms. Hassin?
Good morning, my lady. We received the application this morning, not that long ago, and we have looked at it.
Okay. Is there any other party who haven't received the application? I see there is a hand. Mr. Pinar, I've noted you. Is that your hand?
I suspect it was my hand.
Please, the court.
Okay. Yes, let him go first. It's fine, Mr. Van Bergen. I've noted you. Mr. Pinar?
May I please, court lady? I received the application just prior to us commencing this morning.
Yes.
With the roll call. I haven't had the opportunity, with all due respect,
Come
to
again?
peruse the application.
You haven't
Sorry,
had the opportunity.
I have not had the opportunity to peruse the application, having received it so late.
Okay, thank you.
May it please the court, my lady.
Mr. van Bergen?
Thank you, my lady. I confirm that I have received the application. Also this morning, I have had opportunity to read it. It is not a long application, and I submit it wouldn't take anyone more than 10 or 15 minutes to peruse it,
Okay.
as your ladyship pleases.
Can I hear anybody else who hasn't received the application? Mr. Sibara, I see there is okay.
Yes, madam.
I saw the name of his William Mokari. Is he there? Or is it referring to somebody else? Has he just joined us, or what is happening? Mr. Mokari, have you joined us?
Yes, I have, my lady. But I take no view in respect of the postponement application. I was just going to be here to listen to the evidence of the witness who was going to start to give evidence and decide later whether one will have one or two questions, if any, because I'm here simply on a watching brief for the Gauteng Provincial Executive.
When were you instructed? Because I realized that you have not been part of us.
Yes, no, I didn't have to be. I was instructed a long time ago. In order to save costs, then I didn't have to. There was always somebody who was attending just to brief me from time to time, but only to participate when this witness take a stand.
Okay, thank you very much.
But we take no particular view in respect of the application for postponement.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Sibara?
As it pleases the court, my lady, we received the application. It's very short. I managed to look at it, and I will abide the court decision, my lady.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going. Is there anyone who needs an opportunity to go and peruse the application just 10 minutes before we start? Because it appears all of you have received the application. People like Mr. Pinar haven't had the opportunity to look at it.
Lady, I don't have any objection to standing down for 10 or 15
Yes, but
minutes.
I want to
give
hear.
your ladyship and everybody an opportunity to read it.
Okay.
I think it would be fair.
Thank you. I just want to hear if there are, because I know Mr. Pinar hasn't had the opportunity to look at it.
Shall we stand down for 10 or 15
So
minutes?
I
already?
take it that people who are not saying anything here, they've received the application and have perused it. Mr. Pinar?
May it please the court, my lady.
Yes, the court will take a 10-minute break. It's now 9 minutes past 10. Can we resume at 25 past 10? Just to give you an opportunity and the court to look at the application.
I have no objection, my lady. I'm indebted to your ladyship.
Mr. Late, I haven't heard you. Where are you, or any of the evidence leaders?
Yes, my lady. I had received the application and I uploaded it to guidelines.
Okay. Did you have time to look at it?
Yes, my lady.
Okay. Thank you. On that note, we will resume at 10:25. Thank you.
As the court pleases.
May it please the court, my lady.
on this, which is the decision of Mayberg Transporters and Water Trading as SA Truck Bodies, which is reported at the 1991 Volume 3 of the South African Law Reports, page 310, a decision of the Namibia Supreme Court, of which our former Chief Justice, Justice Mohammed, was a member of that bench, my lady. And we say that there will be extreme prejudice should our client be compelled to continue without our representation and without having prepared. She's present and would confirm everything that I've said, my lady. We've never previously requested a postponement for our purposes. Our client has always been in attendance and has always respected your ladyship's rulings in terms of when the matter will proceed. We just find ourselves in a very, very difficult position, my lady, having not secured payment from the State Attorney's Office and having waited and waited for so many months for them to remedy the problem to no avail. They have not yet done so. So we respectfully request a postponement of this matter, my lady, to the 2nd of May to enable us to proceed fully instructed and fully prepared.
Thank you.
I have no further address unless your ladyship wishes to hear me on any particular aspect, my lady.
Thank you. Can I hear the others? Where do we start? Is it the legal team of Mr. Wortbringel? Am I correct? I don't have my list now. Is there any opposition? Can we start it from there? Okay, you can start from there, Mr. Martin.
As it pleases your ladyship. My lady, if you're happy to hear us now. My lady, we have nothing to contribute at this stage of the debate. We do understand the position that Mr. Hodes' team finds itself in. We've been there ourselves with the State Attorney. I can't really say anything in favour of a postponement or against a postponement. It is what it is, it seems to me, as it pleases your ladyship.
Thank you. I don't have my list. You know how you follow each other. Is it Mr. Pinar or after that?
May it please the court, my lady. Having perused the application and having heard my learned friend's submissions to your ladyship, I would submit, my lady. This is an unfortunate set of circumstances we faced with, but I do submit that I would submit that the application is founded, my lady. It would be a gross irregularity, I submit, to proceed without being properly prepared with the inquest at this stage, my lady, which could, I don't say it will, it could maybe result in a miscarriage of these proceedings, which we should, as far as possible, endeavour not to find ourselves in. So, in conclusion, my lady, I would submit that it would be fair, reasonable and justifiable or justified if the application as presented is for a postponement is granted. My lady, the only issue I would want to raise in this regard is whether the time period is sufficient, as Mr. Hodes has pointed out now, because you know the 2nd of May is just a day after the 1st of May, which is a public holiday. And in any case, there are a number of public holidays as indicated, so I would just maybe venture on the safe side to indicate, shouldn't it maybe be a week later before the inquest proceeds? But that's just a suggestion, my lady. I'm not requesting it as such. May it please the court, my lady.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Thank you, my lady. My lady, I'm sorry to jump in here. just on the last point that Mr. Pienaar raised, the time period that Mr. Hodes has asked for is the time period that his team views as reasonable. As it is, we were reserved for some 7 weeks for this matter. We're going to lose, I think, 3 or 4 of those weeks now if this postponement is granted. I would really try and avoid losing any more of that time if needs to be. If Mr. Hodes doesn't need more time than he's asked for, I would suggest that it not become part of a debate, as it pleases.
Thank you. Is it Mr. van Bergen who follows, or then Mr. Hassim?
Thank you, my lady. My lady, I align myself with what has been said by both Mr. Martin and Mr. Pienaar. The problem is clearly not one of Ms. Mahlangu's making. It would appear that proper and timely steps were taken in an attempt to address the problem without it having been resolved. And I would submit that if one looks at the requirements or set out in the Myburgh transport decision, all the salient issues have been addressed and have been complied with. I would submit it would be in the interests of justice to afford the team of Ms. Mahlangu the time requested to prepare. My lady, there is just one issue that I think, and in saying it, I'm not sure how it should be addressed, but this is an issue that has cropped up in the past. The state attorney must know the impact that a delay in payment to any of the participating teams will inflict. There are, I can't remember how many legal representatives here, but I would suggest that the cost in wasted funds due to the non-payment of Ms. Mahlangu's team for this single day alone must approach, if not exceed, R250,000. And it must be impressed upon the state attorney that this situation cannot be allowed to even occur, and steps must be taken to address it urgently and to prevent a recurrence thereof. As your ladyship knows.
I don't want to be involved in the issue of fees, Mr. van Bergen. I don't want to be involved, but yes.
I understand your ladyship's position. My apologies.
It's not a matter that concerns the court in any event, although I tried to assist in the past. And even now, we must also understand that we had ample time that we gave them, because remember in the previous term, we couldn't proceed because Mr. Hodes was not available. But now, the late stage of this, it's also another concern to me, but I'm just mentioning this.
Yes, well, lady, I understand that, and that's why I said I'm not sure how this should be addressed, but I do submit, my lady, that it is an issue that should be raised. The state attorney must be made aware of the impact that that a delay in payment has. It doesn't only affect the persons who are not paid; it affects all of us and our clients who appear, and that is a serious issue. Not all of the representatives here are financed from the public purse. Not that should make a difference, but it does cost all of these clients a considerable amount of money, and the cumulative effect is huge, as your ladyship pleases.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hassim?
Thank you, my lady. I'm also in agreement with some of the submissions that have been made. And while I understand the position of my colleagues, Mr. Hodes's team, I am, however, required to place the following on record. There is one issue is money, of course, but the other is that the interested parties in this proceedings, which include the families of the deceased and the public, given that this is an inquest, But from my instructions, speaking for our clients, the families, they had prepared themselves to be present and available to observe the testimony of Ms. Mahlangu. This was quite important for them. So they prepared themselves to do so and are now required to change their plans in order to be available to observe the proceedings at another date. And of course, this is not the first time, and I'm not saying that it's, obviously every postponement affects these proceedings, and at this stage to have yet another setback, I'm required to place on record that the families are frustrated and aggrieved by this. Also, I'm not sure what's not clear to me, at least from the application for postponement, is the reasons for the delay in payment by the state attorney. And I suppose my question is, what if the state attorney does not pay again? Because this is not the first time. There are repeated undertakings that have been made to Ms. Mahlangu's legal team that they would be receiving payment, and only to renege on those undertakings. So what would happen again? We certainly can't afford another postponement, apart from the costs that we face. The interests of justice, I would submit, are affected by this. And so, it partly brings me also, I suppose, to Mr. Van Bergen's point about the state attorney's office. I think something does need to be said about it, because it adversely affects these delays, adversely affects the parties, the general public in these proceedings, because they are unusual proceedings. It's not just about the parties, and the interests of justice. And so we do need to have some clarity that this will not happen again. I'm not sure how we do that in the state attorney's office.
Yes, we don't have that. And we don't have. Yes, continue. That's fine.
Sorry, I don't oppose the postponement because I understand the predicament, but I must report very, very serious concern on the part of the families, and I would ask the court to say something about the delay, if the court were minded to grant the postponement. And to find a way to ensure that this doesn't arise again.
But this time frame, if you may address the court about the time frame, because should we lose 12 days because of this? Is it a concern of the court? What should the court do under the circumstances? And you have raised a pertinent issue, which is in my mind, to say, what if they do not pay? Should the court be involved in these issues? Taking into account that we have not been sitting the previous term for a number of days where the legal team was not available, the legal team of the former MEC. If one takes that period into account, we understand all what they are saying. But my concern is why the issue is it being raised now? And what is it if the state attorney is able to pay the other legal teams? Why them? Shouldn't it be maybe, well, I don't want to speculate, and I don't want to say whatever was said in the previous meeting that I had with them, because there were issues. But now, if they can clarify us in relation to that as to what is it that is a problem, why are they not paid?
Yes.
Because surely if the state attorney was able to pay the other legal teams, they should have also been paid.
Indeed, my lady. From the papers, it appears that there was some sort of sort of bureaucratic obstacles. The issue about the CSD registration and the like. I can't understand why that would cause such great delays in payment and only to be raised now. But I don't know that this court can really get into it. The point really is that we were informed last week of this application, which was at a late stage for all of us, including the families.
Correct.
And it does appear to me, and unless I misunderstand the application, that as of last week, there was an undertaking for payment, and it's on the basis of that Mr. Hodis and his team believe that they'd be ready to proceed on the 2nd of May because they anticipate that payment will now be made. In the light of that, it's not obvious to me why the postponement should be to 2nd May as opposed to a week's delay, so a week from now. And because it seems to me that the team had accepted last week already that payment would be forthcoming and they would now proceed. But perhaps Mr. Hodis would clarify that. It just seems that the delay is extraordinary. It's quite lengthy. I understand also the issue of the public holidays, but we've gone on for too long with this inquest to take that into account. I think every day matters at this point. That's all I have to say.
Because if I may, my concern is that if we say that once we start saying because of the fees, then we're going to grant postponements. When you look at the whole thing, coupled with the fact that is it a reason to say because this month has got more holidays? What if, isn't it, these people have agreed that maybe, if I understood their letter and the address by Mr. Hodis to say, perhaps maybe this week, because it's a short week, they're likely to get payment next week. What if the payment doesn't come? Where does it leave us? Because today the reason is the fees. So are they going to come back to say we have not been paid, therefore we're not ready to proceed?
Yes, I think we can't have that happen. So we have to proceed regardless of the non-payment, or else we are held to ransom.
Why do we have to continue in May, not utilize some of the days? Like, for instance, like next week we've got a full week, right? Why can't we use that week and see what happens? Why should we have to wait for fees to be paid for us to continue? I think Mr. Hodis will also address me on these points. I'm just raising them because you are the one who raised more issues, right? So you can proceed. I've noted Mr. Martin, and then I'll just finish your submissions.
My lady, I've made my submission. We are in your hands, and this is a predicament. And maybe Mr. Hodis could help us in his reply, answering some of the questions. Thank you, my lady.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
This pleases your ladyship. My lady, both Ms. Hassim and Mr. van Bergen have both raised the prospect that we need some clarity from the state attorney as to what's going to happen. My understanding from Mr. Hodis' address is that they are assuming payment will be made on the 18th, and unfortunately they have to make the assumption. They don't know for a fact that payment will come on the 18th because the state attorney won't tell them when he intends to pay. So that's the first problem that we have, is that we're all here dealing in speculation as to when this institution is going to do its job and comply with its obligations. Then on the basis that if their assumption is correct, they need 2 weeks to prepare. And that's in light of them seemingly from their application having lost about 6 weeks of preparation whilst waiting for payment.
Just a second. So we're therefore saying that this period until May, it's a period of 2 weeks.
It's a period of 2 weeks. If the state attorney were to pay today, maybe we would be talking about a postponement until the 25th instead of the 2nd of May. But it highlights the problem, which is, where is the state attorney in all of this? And it happens now regularly in court that if the Road Accident Fund is not doing its job, or the Department of Labour is not doing its job, that one of these officials is called in to explain himself to the judge. And I'm not sure that we are not in that position now where Mr. Chawe from the State Attorney or whoever is responsible for this.
Just a second. Once you raise this, I mean, I had a meeting with them and I could hear that some of the things Mr. Chawe indicated that some of the things were that they didn't comply with certain requirements. So Is it our problem? Because my main concern is that if the state attorney is able to pay the others, why can't they pay them? That is my issue. So now that is the reason why I'm saying, should the court proceedings be affected because of this? Because now, what is going to happen? We are taking assumptions now. We don't have anybody from the state attorney right? To say to us, these are the problems, right? But then, why should the court be involved in this? That is my problem, to say, if your legal fees are not paid, as a practitioner, you know what you're supposed to do, especially because after the case management meeting, I let them solve their own problems with the Office of the State Attorney, because the so-called that person who's involved, we were able to get him through the phone, and then they set up a meeting. Right. Now, my problem is that now every time they have a problem with the fees, what is going to happen? Given the ample time that they were given, I mean, these dates that we have arranged, they were arranged as far as last year. Remember what we did when we arranged dates for the first term, right? We also secured the attendance of the whole legal team of the former MEC for this second term. So why should the court be involved there?
Yes. Milady, the problem at this stage, as I see it, is that the state attorney accepts its liability for these fees.
Correct.
It doesn't seem to say that there's any basis upon which it shouldn't be paying these fees. And
Yes.
in circumstances where the matter may need to be postponed, I would expect the state attorney to at least indicate by when payment would be made. What I see from the annexures is that there was a period of time in which Mr. Kanarek was struggling to put his details onto some website which facilitates the payment. I assume that that's been done and that's not an issue anymore. And if that has been done and that's not an issue,
meeting. We don't know. Okay.
then
Yes.
if the state attorney could say to us that we could expect payment by a certain time, then we would be able to deal with the application in a more coherent way. And that's what my concern is with this. Like your ladyship, I'm also concerned about random postponements for payment. It affects all of us significantly.
Yes. Okay, the other thing that you must also take note of is that if you look at the timing of this application, it's a very late application, I must say, in all fairness. I'm just saying
Yes.
that. But now my concern is, why should the court be involved in problems between the attorneys and their clients? Why should the court be involved? And even then, given the fact that, I mean, from Mr. Hode's submissions, we can hear that he's just saying that obviously there is an undertaking to pay, right? And these
Yes.
people from the beginning, they've been paying. Well, there were problems there and there. That is why I was involved. It does not necessarily mean that even if they finish these proceedings, even if they are in the proceedings until the end, then it doesn't mean that they won't be paid. That is my view. I'm just saying, I just want to hear you and the others who want to address me on these issues that I'm raising, they can also do so. Because my concern is, why does the court have to wait? Why should the court be affected? And now that is why I'm saying we must also get clarity as to what is happening. Because if the other parties have been paid, why can't this legal team not be paid?
As it pleases your ladyship. My lady, I can contribute no further on it. My submission is simply that if the state attorney were to tell us when payment would be made, it would be an easier debate for us to have.
How do they say?
How
do they say so if there are issues that this was not completed? What we don't know. How do they tell us? We can't invite them to come to these proceedings to tell us about the fees, right?
Yeah.
And I was just assisting because I don't want to be involved in this kind of issues.
Naturally, my lady.
Okay.
As it pleases.
Thank you so much. After Ms. Hasim, Mr. Late.
Yes, my lady.
Yes.
Well, I think the main issue with the previous meeting between myself and your ladyship and the legal team from Ms. Schlange was that there were certain bureaucratic issues involved in the non-payment. And I think the attorney for Ms. Schlange should be able to tell this court whether those issues has been solved with the state attorney. And I think that is the reason why the others were paid and not the legal team, because they've the same issues were not experienced with those other attorneys and counsel. So I think I don't have a problem with a time for preparation by Mr. Houders. And I think if the instructing attorney can inform the court whether the issues have been solved, we should accept that the payment will be done, and this court should then proceed on such an acceptance as the court previously. Hello.
I saw Mr. Pitlela's hand, and I can see Mr. Pinar. Whose hand is that? I can't see whose hand is that. There's another hand there. Is that Mr. Pitlela?
It's Ms. Sebuku, my lady.
Ms. Sebuku, and I think I've also noted Ms. Toka. Am I correct, Ms. Toka?
No, my lady, I have not raised my hand.
No,
it was a mistake that appeared on the screen.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Mr. Pinar, would you want to address the court?
May it please the court, my lady. In short, your ladyship is called upon to exercise its judicial discretion. I do submit your ladyship is correct in not getting involved in a fee dispute between representing counsel and their clients. I think it would not be proper, my lady, with all due respect. We've been transgressing a number of issues now, one of which is the bureaucratic issue, and that's where the CSD requirement or compliance comes in, made by Department of Treasury or the National Treasury. It's a requirement where being a legal representative, we are service providers. And that's why there must be compliance with the CSD registration as such, my lady. But be that as it may, my lady, I think the proposition put forward by Mr. Late is sound, that the witness's attorney would be the proper person to inform your ladyship. Has the bureaucratic requirements that were at fault, have they been rectified in the meantime? And which appears to have been obstacles in the past with regard to payment, if I interpret the application as it's set out under oath correctly. And once that is all, but I do not see that it's going to be resolved, giving us a clearer picture. If Mr. Chove from the State Attorney has to appear in court.
No.
Because he's faced with the situation, he has to apply with the national rules and regulations of Treasury.
Correct, yes.
So that's not going to, he's not responsible to see to it that all the CSD requirements are in place. That's for the party who is delivering the service.
Okay.
So I would think that, but my lady, should we, and taking into consideration the fact that the application has been launched late with all the other adverse issues that have come to the fore, my lady, should the postponement be granted until the 2nd of May as requested? This should be sufficient and ample time if there are any further bureaucratic requirements that have to be, or financial requirements, fiscal requirements that have to be complied with, to see to it that same is effected as timeously as possible.
Okay.
And that it's done so that the matter can proceed, my lady, on the 2nd of May, as requested. Be it as, no matter of all the holidays that are in the near future. But nonetheless, that's the time period that Mr. Rodez has stipulated and determined to be sufficient time to prepare to proceed with the matter. And should there be another request on that date, my lady, for example, and this is just an example, then of course sufficient time has been granted, not only to prepare, but to ensure that all fiscal requirements are met and complied with. Taking into account, my lady, that these apparently already come to the fore in the past. There hadn't been compliance previously and what the difficulties was that were inquired, but that would be for the instructing attorney to place before the court, but not Mr. Chove. And
yes, thank you.
But taking everything into consideration, my lady, my submission would be that it would be, the postponement is granted, which is in your ladyship's discretion. There can be no justification for any further postponement on these grounds, unless there's a total withdrawal of the legal representatives from the inquest.
Okay.
Right, is the court, my lady.
Thank you. Mr. Pichela?
Thank you, my lady. My lady, my only concern is going forward. Say the postponement is granted. The period that remains from the 2nd to the 26th, are we going to finish?
Yes.
Because, I mean, I can hear with regard to the concerns about payments. Yes, we sympathize with that. But I also think the attorneys need to take us into confidence. If they have complied and the state attorney is not paying, then it's one thing. But if they haven't complied with the CSD requirements, they are not going to get paid. That is the law. And this court cannot interfere in that process.
Yes.
So going forward, are we going to finish? Because this case now it's interfering with a lot of our processes as well.
All right.
Thank you, my lady.
Ms. Soko?
As the court pleases, my lady. My lady, very briefly, as a premise, I just need to state that I'm not opposed to the application for postponements by my Leonard.
Noted you, Mr. Van Bergen. Yes.
I'm not opposed to the application by my colleagues on behalf of the former MEC, Ms. Mahlangu. And I had noted to address another issue where earlier Mr. Pinar had said maybe the 2nd is not enough. And I wanted to comment or say, I align myself with the comments of Mr. Martin earlier when he said if the legal team of Mr. Mahlangu says they'd be ready by the 2nd, and that's where we should leave it. However, the main point which I wanted to bring across is the court's concern or question on whether or not this court can interfere with the non-payment of fees, or, as Mr. Pinar puts it, fee disputes. And I want to answer that question by referring you to the Judicial Services Commission Act, where it deals with the Judicial Code of Conduct at Clause 4, Roman numeral 3, and I read it. And before I read it, I just want to place on record that my interpretation of that clause is that your ladyship is not entitled to interfere with the state attorney or whether or not to interfere in the fee disputes. Open quote, judges do not appear at public hearings or otherwise consult with an executive or legislative body or official, and I want to underline or emphasize or official, except on matters concerning the law, the legal system, or the obstruction of justice. And I submit there where it says or official, it means your ladyship is precluded from interfering in the fee dispute. That's all, my lady.
Thank you so much. Any more hands before? Okay, I've noted Mr. Van Bergen. Can I just check if there is any other person who wants to address the court? Mr. Profi, and then is that you alone? I'm going to go to Mr. Van Bergen. Mr. Van Bergen.
Thank you, my lady. If I can just briefly comment on some of the issues that have been raised. Firstly, the question whether your ladyship can be called upon to interfere or to address what has been termed fee disputes, and I agree with Ms. Seboko that that would be inappropriate. My lady, in a situation such as the present, the affected party, and that would be Ms. Mahlangu's legal representatives, have two options, and only two options. The first is to apply for a postponement. The second is to withdraw from representing her. They have elected to bring an application for postponement, and as has been stated earlier, that is for your ladyship to consider and to judicially assess whether the requirements have been met. My lady, the only additional aspect that I wish to raise, and that is perhaps partly related to the question of the duration of the postponement requested. There was a precursor to today's application, a letter that was circulated, if I recall correctly, last Thursday, in which all parties were forewarned of the fact that an application would be brought.
But remember, even if you say that, I understand that, but a letter is not an application, isn't it?
No, well, that's not what I seek to address, my lady.
Okay.
In that letter, there was reference to the intention of preparing a detailed document for
the chronology of events
and parties. My lady, that would of course be of assistance, and it may curtail the time period required for the further hearing. But my concern is if that document were to be provided at the last day before the resumption, if the postponement is granted, that may just result in further requests for postponement to enable parties to prepare. So if your ladyship were to be minded to grant the postponement, I would just request that consideration be given to a date by which that document should be provided to enable parties to prepare, so that there aren't any additional requests for postponement arising from a new document being served. That's
okay. Thank you. Mr. Profi.
As the court pleases, my lady, I was kicked out, so I apologize if this was maybe addressed and I missed it while I was trying to log back in. But
Yes.
It's not so much objecting to the postponement. It's just a point of clarity that I require. I don't understand why these issues have to run parallel to one another. That why can't we proceed and this fee debacle gets handled in the background while we continue? I don't understand why that's not possible. And then just in terms of the timeline, and to not waste more time, if we come to the second and then we have another issue, would it not be prudent for us to then come to, if we postpone today to perhaps the 20th or the 21st, and then hear what the story is for us to proceed on that day, or iron out issues to really start on the second, would be my submissions.
All right. Is there any other person who wants to address the court? Okay. Over to you, Mr. Hodies.
Thank you, my lady. My lady, I'd like to deal with the issues that have been raised as follows. Firstly, my lady, my attorney is 100% compliant This is dealt with, my lady, in the affidavit at paragraphs 29 and 30, where in summary they say that there had been an issue with the CSD and other, as Mr. Late calls it, bureaucratic issues. These have all
That is
been
now
brought to
paragraphs.
29 and 30, my lady.
Okay.
And I'm assured, and my attorney is present, my lady, that they are 100% compliant and have done everything that was required of them. So there's no issue there. On the basis of them being compliant, as your ladyship will see, the undertaking was then made in paragraph 30 for payment by about the 18th of April 2023. That's how we worked out the schedule, my lady, which would explain to everybody exactly how we determined the dates required for preparation and to compile the chronology. So the current situation, my lady, is that my attorneys assure me that they are 100% compliant. Everything is in place. It's a question of the state attorney having to load the payment and their procedures that they follow in order to facilitate the payment, but it has not been made as yet. Secondly, my lady, the position that we found ourselves in was fully disclosed at all possible points that we could, and we forewarned our colleagues, and I am indebted to them and appreciate their attitude to this matter, because they've all been appreciative of the situation that we find ourselves in. The third issue, my lady, is that the delays are out of our hands. It's the state attorney's office that can't, for some unknown reason, speed the payment procedure up or work things out within their situation. My lady, we still need to prepare. We've detailed this in the correspondence. As to the proposal concerning the chronology, I think it's very reasonable, and we can undertake, my lady, to working on this timetable, provide the chronology to everybody. We'll upload it to case lines, my lady, on Friday, the 21st of April.
21st of April.
Yes, my lady. So then everybody will have that to enable them to prepare in anticipation of the testimony. They'll have that week before we commence, which is a shortened week, to go through it, and then we proceed on the 2nd. As everybody has said, my lady, and I don't like threatening the court or anybody else, should there be no payment, then the position would be that we would have to withdraw on the 2nd. It's out of our hands. There's authority on that as well, my lady. But let us do our best and try to remain in the matter so that we can look after our client as we're obliged to do, because we've reached such a far stage in the proceedings that we'd like to finalize the matter and see it to its conclusion. So our intention is to remain in, provided obviously that we're paid. I agree with your ladyship. It's strange that we were singled out for non-payment, but I do believe that some of our colleagues have had other issues along the way. Speaking for myself, and I don't want to give evidence, my lady, I have another matter where the state attorney has also not paid me, and the matter has even been completed and I'm still not paid. So I will not carry on working for them where there's no actual payment but just promises of payment. So Mr. Profi's proposal doesn't work unless, and I don't want to be facetious, somebody's prepared to guarantee the fees, but nobody can with respect do so. So unfortunately, we find ourselves in this position, not of our own doing. My attorney did at some stage change accounts, but their new account is uploaded. They are CSD compliant. They've done every single thing that's been required of them, and there is nothing outstanding in that regard. I'm assured by my attorney who's present. So we've done everything, well, they've done everything that they can to ensure that they comply with all the requirements. It's a situation that was created by the practicalities of the circumstances at the time, and we have no choice but to request this postponement, my lady.
Did you answer the issues that were raised by Mr. Pikela?
I believe I did, my lady.
Yes, the concerns about the time period. That if
yes,
we
my
start,
lady. I do believe that we will finish in time. I do.
Yes.
And that was all taken into account as well, my lady, when we compiled the application for the postponement. We took the time required to prepare as well as the time then required to testify into account. And we do believe that we will fall within the time that's available, my lady. I don't believe, dealing with Mr. Pienaar's earlier submission, that we need more time. We should know with certainty by the 18th of April where we stand. If it's the situation that we have to withdraw, then everybody will be notified timelessly. But either way, my lady, the assurance can be given that the matter will proceed on the 2nd of May. That's an assurance that I can give.
Thank you very much. Can we take the tea adjournment now?
As your ladyship pleases.
Thank you.
As your ladyship pleases.
Thank you. Having listened to the arguments by all the parties involved in this inquest regarding the application for a postponement by Mr. Hodes, counsel for the former MEC, Ms. Tetani Mahlangu, I am satisfied that it is in the interest of justice to grant the postponement. I therefore postpone this inquest to the 2nd of May 2023 to afford the legal team of the former MEC the opportunity to deal with their issues and also finalize their preparations. 2, the chronology of evidence that the legal team intend to upload on behalf of Ms. Mahlangu should be uploaded on Caseline on or before the 21st of April 2023. Thank you very much.
As the court pleases, thank you, my lady.
Thank you.
As it pleases
As the court pleases.
As court pleases.
As the court pleases.
Pleases your ladyship.
As the court pleases, lady.
May it please the court, my lady.
As the court pleases, my lady.